there's things outside of our control. We have to be able to like let go and just be able to like learn that ability to be patient and to, not just try to like just always micromanage and control things, but there is a season for everything, and being able to, just rest in that regard.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the World Class Leadership Podcast. I am your host, Pierre Monice, and I'm super excited, super thrilled to have a conversation with a good friend of mine, Christopher Gomez. And Chris, let's, by way of introduction, let everyone know who you are and what do you do.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me on the show, and excited to be able to dive in. So Christopher Gomez, I am an executive search consultant, have been doing that for about 15 years. I'm also a loving husband and a loving father, a beloved son of God, a board member over a nonprofit, and a praise and worship leader, guitarist. And and then I'm sorry, I got caught up in the moment as the dual question. What was the second one?
Oh, you do it all. You do it all. You hit it kind of, who you are, what you do. So you hit that. So, but before we're going to go a little deeper in that, but before we go further, I like my guests to get to know a little bit more, just kind of outside of work, about our guests. So I like to start with the kind of off the cuff question. If you can vacation in one location, Chris, with all of your vacation days, what one location would that be and why?
Boom, I'm excited to be able to hit on that. So about 7 years ago, I quit drinking, not because it was like because I had a drinking problem, but in essence, I listened to a talk by Zig Ziglar, and he talked about how he had been sober for like 40 years and how he made this conscious decision to basically grow in his own career development. And I was so inspired by that I was like, yes, that's what, like, all right, I'm ready to kick the tires and to be able to grow. I was already flirting with like doing different fasts, et cetera. So just to go all in and kick that. So did that. And so what I've kind of found, we were just in Hilton Head as we were talking, offline last week. And like, I can vacation on the beach for like 2 or 3 days, but my personality color is red. So I'm a doer. So like I get sitting around and I start getting itchy, like, I start like thinking about how I can like fix other things. So yeah, that's a disaster. So if I could vacation one place, what I came to the resolution on is a couple of our friends opened up a ministry called Catholic Sports Camps, where we basically, regardless of children's ability to pay, we bring all walks of life into these sports camps, and we have professional athletes that basically preach the word and minister to the kids to inspire them to become the best versions of themselves. And so I think I love relaxing, but I feel like with me being a doer, I'd rather like just lift up other people instead of just sitting around. So that's my answer.
I like that, Chris. See, that's where we get along, So you took that question. So instead of just vacationing just for yourself, but finding an opportunity to serve during your vacation time or your downtime, that's just more uplifting for you. And I love that. I love that. So thank you so much for sharing that. So Chris, world-class leadership. I truly believe that everyone, is called to lead, to move from being a follower to an agent of change. And the work that you do, I really believe that you're making a big difference. The name of your company, Spirit Consulting. So how did that name come about?
Yeah. So the sports camps that I'm talking about was originally branded Spirit Hockey Camp, and my dad ran them in the 80s with the Blackhawks, but had to let it go as his business grew. And so we were running a hockey camp, a soccer camp, and a baseball camp. And this was back in 2017 when it began. We ran for a couple of years, not actually under one brand. And I kind of saw that we weren't leveraging like economies of scale. So we decided to bridge them all under one brand. But then the Spirit thing, which we wanted to like honor our father with, just like that was just so clear. And so one day before we were going to a board meeting, my brother, who's a CPA, like just said to me, like, decisively like, hey, here's what's going to happen. Like, this is going to be Catholic sports camps for this nonprofit organization. And then the consulting business that you're right about to launch is going to be Spirit Consulting. And like, when he said it to me, it was just like, boom, just like right into my heart. And I knew like right then and there that that's exactly what I was meant to do.
Yeah, I love that, because there's so much power, especially in society, with the name. When you introduce yourself, you share your name. When you talk about your business as a name, and I love the fact that there's a meaning behind that, and it's not just branding, but kind of what you do and how you do it. And we've connected, just especially from an executive search standpoint. My background in recruitment, so there's a people dynamic of that. So Chris, can you tell us a little bit about as you connect with people, how does the name from a branding standpoint go further than just a brand?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I think I know part of this is also discussing failures, which I might be stepping on maybe the next question, but I think it's important. I think it's important to kind of combine this. So in essence, like, in 2016, I entered into a divorce that raged on for 2 years. And it was like the most trying adversity that I've ever experienced in my life. And again, I launched the business in 2018. So basically 2 years leading up to launching the business. And so in that experience, like, usually in operations, you run a vendor analysis and you want to make sure that like, you're looking at different people and really, assessing them to put the very best one possible. So I did that. And I think maybe was blinded by the person that I ended up hiring. And it just ended up feeling like it just dragged on forever and ever. And basically, like he definitely overpromised and underdelivered. And so I had this just experience where it was like, this was the worst experience I've ever dealt with a consultant. He's a legal consultant. I'm obviously a human resources consultant in executive search. And so that really was also the foundational piece as to what our mission was going to be at Spirit Consulting. So our mission is to inspire virtuous leadership. And, I had this just like bad, vice-filled, bad communication, not a great relationship with this legal consultant. So I wanted to do the exact opposite. I wanted to be very transparent with people. I wanted to be loving for people. And I literally was just having a conversation today with another executive. And we were talking about his career, and he mentioned that, like he often feels when he's in the executive search process with some of the larger firms that there's just poor communication, that oftentimes it's like he gets involved into the process and then it's just like he's like treated like a mushroom, just kept in the dark and fed poop all day long. So I wanted to be different. So that is one of like the other things that when we're hiring all of our staff is one of our cornerstones. Like we hire for high EQ, the people that love other people. And we realize that when you enter into conflict management with people, it's a very loving thing to do because you have the opportunity to be able to share feedback and help people grow. And unfortunately, a lot of our peers, just like spend all these people's time outside of the work, like interviewing, going through assessments, all that process, and then don't even have the common courtesy to say, hey, you were unfortunately rejected because X, Y, and Z. And I think if you worked on this, you could be, more effective in a future opportunity, which would only expand relationships. But nonetheless, I don't know. So anyways, that's a little bit how we're differently. Yeah. And as I mentioned, like our mission and vision is to inspire virtuous leadership. Now you might be like, well, that's kind of weird because, well, how does that work from like an executive search and work psychology standpoint? St. Francis said, preach the gospel all day long and when necessary, use words. So for that, it's like when we're working with our clients, it's just we're going to always do what's in the best interest of people. And we're going to just live that. And by living that example, it inspires people to think about doing things differently. So,
yeah. So I want to go back. I mean, that you gave me a lot to unpack, so I can't go into all of it. But when we talked about, world-class leadership, leadership isn't always pretty. We have shortcomings, we have failures. And thank you so much for being vulnerable and sharing. You mentioned you went through a drawn-out, tough divorce. How did that change you from a leadership standpoint to the leader you are today, and how have you grown from that?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think the first thing that comes to mind is you have to be able to let go. And so many times in leadership, we're always trying to control. We're just so used to being able to okay, we got to set our KPIs, we got to set our scorecard, we got to execute through on this. And in a scenario like a divorce, you're just completely at the realm of your attorney, the other person's attorney, the judge, the court system, etc. And the other thing is timing. There were so many times where I honestly just had to hit the ground and pray because there's nothing that I can do to be able to speed it up, to stop it, etc. And it's just completely just besides myself in that regard, which I think that's been a very beautiful lesson as well in leadership, because how many times are we suffering? One of my business mentor right now has gone through a situation where he spent 30 years building an organization, and his business partner ended up hiring two presidents in a row who basically are destroying the organization. And so he is just massively God, I don't understand. I built this organization. I thought it was going to be the thing that I can rest my hat on. And now I'm just seeing it be destroyed. And so there's things outside of our control. We have to be able to let go and just be able to learn that ability to be patient and to, not just try to just always micromanage and control things, but there is a season for everything, and being able to, just rest in that regard.
Yeah, no, that is so powerful, Chris, because, oftentimes we want to, as a leader, despite what's going on in our personal lives, we try to sometimes compartmentalize and block it out like it doesn't exist. But in order to grow from those experiences, we have to just accept it and hit it dead on. So I like what you said. Sometimes you needed some time. You needed to address that. And when we don't, it could be extremely detrimental. Now, what would you tell to the listener today, Chris, that, is going through the motions of leadership, wants to propel in leadership, but hasn't really grasped, how they could kind of learn from their past mistakes or their failures? Because society doesn't really like to talk about failures, right? It's all about, all the things you've done right. But how would you encourage that leader who needs to kind of come to grips and accept the path in order to push forward?
Well, I think, everyone loves to watch the Olympics, and we always see that all of the athletes show up and they don't it's just them with a bag and they're ready to compete. Not at all. They always have a team that's surrounding around them. And I think that was something that took me a little bit of time to be able to get as well, as you have to have that humility to be able to say, I stink, there's just people that are always going to be better than you. And I think the opportunity is to be able to see those people that are being put in your life to be able to help you to level up. But you have to have that humility to actually be able to say, I need help. And not everyone is always willing to do that. And just for myself, I feel like my organization has just been steamrolling in growth since we started to bring in advisors, having a business mentor and having a spiritual director, and just people that are surrounding me that are constantly helping me to level up and leverage their years of experience and wisdom to help me grow.
Oh, man. I like the Olympic examples. I think regardless of whether you're a sports fan or not, the Olympics definitely riled everybody up. And there's so many life applications and illustrations you can pull from that. And Chris, you hit it right there. Even for myself, man, I had to take a moment to self-reflect. Once I moved from competition to service in my leadership, things totally changed for me. And not just competition from the standpoint of the other company across town, but even in my own department, even within my own company. When it comes to leadership, we got to figure out we don't have all the answers. So I like what you said there. We got to admit that, hey, we don't have it all figured out. We have to ask for help. And I think once a leader, it's an individual in leadership, moves from competition to service, it's a game changer for their personal life and their leadership.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah, sorry, I had to self-reflect. There wasn't a question there, so I had to, I had to. This is also therapeutic for me, Chris. So don't mind me at all. So kind of in our closing thoughts, Chris, the work that you do, obviously executive search, consulting, people are coming to you to solve a problem. What does it look like, when you're trying to help an organization or help a person solve a problem, but they're not willing to accept the feedback? Or you have to be a little bit more crafty to get your point across. Does that ever happen? And if so, what does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of that's part of the skin that you've got to wear when in consulting, right? It's like at the end of the day, you're an outside consultant. So oftentimes in my case, the hiring manager is the person that's making the decision. So you can serve up the solution all day long and create the business case. But at the end of the day, they're the person that is hiring the person or living with the solution, et cetera. So I think that's the other challenge with it. Of oftentimes you have to be able to speak truth in love. Like, it's very loving to be truthful to the person and share exactly how you feel, which at the end of the day will come around. I think the more that I can just think about a couple of examples from my own career where I feel like there's been times when I didn't necessarily say exactly what I felt like I should have said, and it ended up being a bigger problem. And then there's been times where I have been very verbose of like, okay, well, I disagree with you here, and this is exactly why. They still went the wrong decision. But then that further down the road came back to actually be one of those situations where like, okay, I'm getting another project because they recognize like, whoops, I made the wrong decision there and I should have gone in that regard. So I think you got to speak truth in love, and you got to be able to present the solutions to the people that you're working with. But at the end of the day, it's like people have free will, and you got to be able to give them that space to be able to make those decisions for themselves.
We have to speak truth, in love, and we also have to receive it, with a willing heart. So that is so powerful. Well, Chris, I appreciate the conversation today. We're going to have your contact information in the show notes, but for those who are curious, what's the best way they can get in contact with you and learn more about what you do?
Yeah, you can find our website at www.spiritmco.com. That's Spirit, M as in management, C as in consulting, O as in organization.com, spiritmco.com.
Excellent. Thanks for being with us today, Chris. And thank you to our listeners. We look forward to sharing with you in the future. But again, World Class Leadership Podcast, where we encourage you to move from being a follower to an agent of change in your community. We'll talk to you soon. Have a great one.